Fireside Fridays for graduate researchers. You're more than welcome today. Today is the very first one, and just to say, this is going to be recorded, so we'll have it. So it'll be recorded for the 20 minutes of the chat, and then we'll stop the recording so that you can answer questions. But just before we go into today's chat, I just want to say that this is a series of 6, and it's going to be followed on the 26th of February with how to get the best from your RPDP. And my colleague Emer and Janet will be just in the hot chair for that. And on the 12th of March, Janet is there in the background. And the 12th of March is a postdoc right from me. My colleague Niamh O'Connor will be in the hot seat for that. She's the expert. On the 26th of March, what is the best time to apply for jobs? I'll be in the hot seat back for that again. And 16th of April, why are PhDs so sought after in the startup sector? We've somebody who is a PhD researcher, very successful in the startups. He'll be talking to us that day. And on the very last, the 30th of April in this series will be dedicated to arts and humanities, social science researchers, and we've some wonderful people to speak then. In the background today are colleagues of mine from the UCD Careers Network that are vital to this. There's Johanna Hannah there, we can wave, who's actually going to be manning the technology, and she's graduate researchers, and Niamh Kelly from the UCD Careers Network, who you've probably seen her name go out, and then Janet and Emer are here as well today. But the most important person today here is actually Eoin Lynch. Eoin actually inspires these talks because he actually asked me a lot of questions one day at a talk I was invited to, and I just thought, actually, he's asking the questions that every single graduate researcher asked me in one-to-ones, and he was the inspiration for going public on this. So, Eoin, you want to introduce yourself there? And Eoin is going to ask me the hard questions that you are normally asking me in a one-to-one, and as I said, there'll be time for questions in the end. So, Eoin, would you like to introduce yourself, and then you can start asking me the questions?
No problem at all. So my name is Eoin Lynch, and I'm a master's research student there working with UCD. I'm completing a master's in agricultural extension, innovation and support, working out of the office in Tinahely. So yeah, it's like I'm from Derry originally, so if anyone's threw off by the accent, that's where that's coming from. Yeah, just it's always been part of me to always ask questions, particularly the questions that maybe someone else is going to want to know but will not ask. So as Ger has already experienced firsthand. But so to get that stuck into what we're actually here today to talk about then. So the question that we're kind of addressing today then, Ger, is what's the best time to engage with the UCD Careers Network?
Well, thanks for asking that question, Eoin, and it's a really good question. And in theory, the answer to that is as early as possible. But as early as possible does not mean that you have to run in for a one-to-one. We're now, my colleagues in GSO, as you know, those of you that are first years have just arrived this year. We've had an online orientation both in September and only last week. So, and that will be going live, of course, when we're back in the university. So we meet you now on the very first day. But there's no need to probably come in for one-to-one after that. But engaging with careers from the very beginning is actually essential in terms of engaging with your career. And that can kind of take on a variety of ways. And it is essential that you do this. And if that means coming to me for, some ideas, that's great. But if you look at actually the guide, the journey of the PhD and the graduate studies website, you'll see kind of touch points there. And just to give you kind of a rough idea, it's very important to engage with your career, but I would also say that, for instance, know what you want at each stage in your career and what you need. So just to reframe a little bit about, a question that PhDs always say to me, what can a PhD do when they finish? Where will PhDs get jobs? Where do research masters get jobs? The answer, I suppose, just to change that around a little bit is, as a chemical engineer with a PhD, or as a historian with a PhD, where do I get jobs? So rather than identifying yourself as, it'd be like somebody else identifying themselves as a BA instead of being BA in economics. Identify yourself with your discipline, and that you're going to be one of the best educated people in that particular discipline. And then that actually opens up avenues that are very different to answering the question, what can I do with a PhD? You actually can do anything within your discipline and actually go to the very top. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, or if that's the answer you want, or if it's what people need to hear.
Yeah, it's a good start. So essentially what you're saying is it's not necessary very, very early on for a one-to-one. If you need ideas, come and talk to you, but maybe perhaps engage more with the likes of LinkedIn and platforms to see what kind of jobs are available and match your discipline to jobs and see, are those jobs you want, or look for jobs that you think you might like and find, is there other disciplines that you need to add to your portfolio? Would that be correct?
Well, yes, then that's even probably very ambitious in the very few first few days or the very first few weeks. I suppose the touch point would be, and Eamon's going to talk about the RPDP in the next series, and that's where you do your stage transfer. And part of that, that's at the stage that's become compulsory, and part of that is a skills analysis or a skills profile and, you know, a development plan. That's a very good time to think about your career in terms of the skills, and probably engaging with myself and certainly with workshops maybe around the transferable skills. That sort of goes between the first year, 12 months and 18 months. And then after that, you know, you have your plan done then, and then there's different stages of engagement after that. But certainly, you know, in first year and the first few weeks, it's too early to have a CV done. And but, you know, when people do come to me, what I say to them, they start building relationships, knowing what's going on in the world. It's never a better time to make, you know, to build relationships from the very beginning, you know, across the university, and holding on to your old contacts as well, and remembering the person you are beforehand, and not just get into this PhD bubble. You know, here, I'm not going to know anybody else. You hold on to your old relationships and build on them, and it's very easy to do it while you're online. And then come to some, now the other thing I suppose I should say is there are groups of students, or cohorts, if you like, of structured PhDs, particularly the CRTs. I don't know if any of you are here today, but and similar, where they would be going out on an internship, maybe actually at the end of the first year. You know, again, those students would then want to engage very seriously earlier than some, maybe not, than other students, because, you know, if you're going out on an internship, then you need the CV, you also need the interview skills, and, you know, those students would actually probably want to start engaging from the very, very beginning in terms of having that CV and that interview polished by the time they go for those interviews at the end of the first year. So it's actually not the same for everybody. I think there's about 2,000 graduate researchers in UCD, and each person is an individual, and each person is different. So it's important to remember that and work out what's the best thing for you under your given circumstances. And I suppose that's an example of the internships, or if indeed if you're going on a trip away or have to go away and you have to apply for those, then that's very steady engagement. It would have to come quite early then, you know. Does that help to answer some of the questions, I wonder?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So obviously, as you said, you touched on earlier on there about the RPDP, you know, and how that has become a compulsory part for transfer stages, hasn't it?
It has, yes, and that's why the next on the 26th of February, my colleague Emer, who's there in the background, you can wave there, Emer. Emer and Janet is going to ask her the hard questions about that, and, you know, what's involved in it and why it's compulsory, and of course the benefits to it. And I, you know, since it's been come on stream, I actually think it's a very, very beneficial time, because it touches in with sort of the ideas and the timing of when I think it's best to start thinking about skills development. And the other thing about the RPDP, and I won't talk about it too much because Eamon will be talking about it, but any PhD or any graduate researcher in UCD and indeed across Ireland, you're learning an awful lot from the very beginning. You're building skills, but one of the issues probably is that you don't recognize that you're building them. So sort of along the way, just taking a stopgap, a different say, you know, what have I got now? What have I learned? You know, owning those, that's the basis of going forward, and then identifying and being honest about what's missing. And when I say identify, you know, think of yourself as a process engineer or a historian or an electronic engineer, with a PhD or somebody that's very highly qualified. You know, what do we need in those disciplines? What do we need maybe to transfer to other disciplines? So you're identifying gaps maybe at that stage, and the idea of gaps as you go along means that you can actually fill those gaps before you ever leave UCD. There's wonderful, wonderful opportunities. And, you know, that's where every so often it's good to have a touch point. And, you know, again, we can help in the UCD Careers Network about, you know, filling those gaps, you know, how you upskill, where you would find those skills, but very often what it is when you actually sit down and in a workshop with somebody or in a one-to-one, they actually have the skills, they just don't know they have them. And then the next stage of that then is, okay, you have the skills, how do you articulate them? And that's almost, it's really important, and people get quite frightened about it. But, you know, the whole idea of coming to a workshop on that is to demystify the process. It's actually once you know, get the hang of it, it's quite formulaic, and that's what we mean about engagement, learning about this, how to do it, and take the mystery out of it. And once you have those, I hate saying the word tricks, but once you have those, how to do that, you have it for life, and it's very, very, very useful. You know, and students often make the mistake of coming and thinking they have to have a CV ready before they come to me, or they have to have a CV. No, they don't. You know, that's almost the last thing you should be doing. The other bits before that is much more important. Knowing yourself, knowing what you have to offer, knowing what you need, knowing what the employer wants, be it an academic employer or not. They're actually, once you know those things, the CV will actually write itself, you know, at the right time. And the other thing I would say, particularly to first years, and maybe people who are here within the first year, you know, fads in terms of CVs and interview skills, they do change. We stay on top of those fads, or not skills, but sorry, you know, what's topical and how you know, the type of interviews that were going on maybe 6 years ago are not in vogue now, for obvious reasons. And and I feel they'll change again, but we stay on top of that. So getting worked up about things like that too early is not actually beneficial. It's much more important to develop yourself and your skills as a person, and to really recognize that you're doing that. And you know, people come to me at the last stage and say, I never worked in a team. And you say, well, aren't you part of the group? Oh yeah, yeah. So you are part of a team, but people don't realize they are they've never managed a project. Well, what is your PhD? It's a project, you know. So it's a kind of like around that reframing, getting help with that. But once you have that, and all you have to do at the moment as you go along is put this on paper as you go along. You know, Excel spreadsheet, you know, would be marvelous. Anything, keep a track of what you're doing, because in 4 years' time you'll be thinking you never did something. Then you look back, oh, I did that in first year. Oh, I did that before I actually came into the PhD. And it's just keeping a log. And then the last bits then, which can be very slow and tiring, applying for jobs, but if that's done, then you can pluck here, there, and everywhere, pop them into your CV or whatever, the application form, and have a chat about it and polish. It all is much more. So it's a kind of a process that the engagement, maybe, I hope that's answered your question. When you engage the career service, you engage the whole idea from the very beginning in stages, and it's incrementally built along the way, along the 4 years, the 3 years, the 4 years is I think what I'm hoping to say. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so you know, just to touch on a few things. So obviously the key point is that it's best to engage early, but don't put the pressure on yourself to expect that you're supposed to have everything in line and everything's supposed to be in order. Be prepared to be open-minded and relaxed. It's an experience and it's a journey, and you will get there. And I know you touched there about, you know, attending likes of transferable skills workshops for anyone that maybe does feel that they want to address maybe any gaps. Would it be right in saying that the UCD, they have those skills workshops coming up shortly, or that are available for people to avail of?
Yeah, well, they're done on a very regular basis. You know, they're part of the suite of workshops that, you know, that we do with my colleagues here in graduate studies. There's none right this minute on, if you look at Careers Connect. They, you know, they're done very, very regularly. But we sort of, myself and Janet in particular, have a chat, you know, at the beginning of every term, and we say, what are the best ones, this transferable skills to put on this semester, given the time of year, right? So, and we might look as well and see, you know, who's out there at the moment that needs those sort of, so at the moment, you know, at different times of the year, we might, at the moment, I'm running CV workshops every 3 weeks because it's actually the best thing to do for the moment, and interview skills as well. Transferable skills, Jen and I will have to talk about it, but they're done at least once a semester. But if we feel they need to be done more often, we'll do them more often. It's responding to needs all the time, you know, and that need can change from semester to semester or even year to year, depending on the balance of the students looking for particular workshops. But they are regularly, and all people have to do is email us and say, when are you putting on this again? And we say, yeah, well, sure, we put it on 3 weeks if that's what you want. Fantastic. You know, we're obviously doing everything remotely, so it's but for instance, transferable skills, the last one was on in December, the workshop, and there will be certainly one on before long, before Easter probably. Yeah. Okay. But that was a lovely sum.
Yeah, because I'm thinking
about enjoying,
you know, for example, like
yeah, go on.
Yeah, because I know, like, for example, there'll be master students, for example, that'll be coming into the masters that I'm hopefully heading towards completing now, and you know, their first semester has already passed, you know, and you know, it's one of them. I'm looking at them and kind of going, well, this is one of those ones where maybe perhaps it's, you know, it'll be good for them to maybe have a look at it and maybe become engaged at this point. You don't have to have a serious commitment to, you know, finding your job and stuff now, but to, you know, go through the process of identifying your skills and your weaknesses and going through the transferable skill workshops and the likes of it, and, you know, get a start on it, that kind of way, nice and gently.
Yeah, and I'm glad you've raised the you know, the graduate researcher that's actually a research master's. Their timeline, and I suppose it's important to say that, and thanks for raising it, is actually different. I know we've been kind of talking about a 4-year cycle here, but the research master's generally is about a 2-year cycle. Would I be right in that? About 2 years, generally speaking, would be 2 years. Therefore, you know, your needs are more condensed. So I think possibly, you know, you don't have the stage transfer either. So the research master's student, really, it actually, the pace would quicken in terms of your engagement, would really start wanting to engage in terms of transferable skills and even the idea of careers well before the first year is out, actually. So, but I don't want to go into the whole topic that we're going to discuss around about what's the best time to apply for jobs. That's a different fireside chat. But, you know, the engagement for masters, it should be, as you know, it's a different pattern, you know, and but it's a different style. So a little bit earlier for master's research graduates. Yeah. And by the way, I just want to say the summation.
I'm just looking at some of the comments.
Oh yes, okay, yeah. Would we read the chat?
You know, like there's Maria there.
Yeah, I can go through the comments if that's. I was just waiting for the end. So
okay,
there are some.
Okay, so just to, I suppose what I'll do, so just to say, I think Eoin gave it before we go into the questions and the comments. Eoin made a lovely summation there, and I really want to just say thank you for it. Summation is, you know, it's a journey. Enjoy it, engage along the way that's appropriate for you, and we're there for you. I think is what is am I right in saying that's how we sum up what you said, Eoin?
Yep. You know, like the support is there, and don't be afraid to engage with it and ask your question. There's no such thing as a stupid question. The only stupid question is a question that's never asked.
Lovely. I think we might end the recording there. There's no such thing as a stupid question. It's you know, because you asking me a question weeks ago, or actually it's probably in November, is why we're here today. And I just, before we stop the recording and we go into questions, I just want to say thank you very much, Eoin, for you know, coming into this chair today and chatting with me. It's very enjoyable. And you know, I know you're going to be in the seat again in a few weeks' time asking more questions. But we can stop the recording now so that we can open up the floor to the chat line and to questions that probably one or both of us will